I would like to welcome ministers of foreign affairs of our Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of our America. Today, we have called a political council, the 21st political council of our alliance. Mr. Bruno Rodriguez Padilla from Cuba and Rogelio Maita from Bolivia, Kenneth Daru from the Commonwealth of Dominica, Seth Green from Antigua and Barbuda, Minister Oliver Joseph from Grenada, or St. Kitts and the Grenadines, Ken Salpeter's, the State Minister for Foreign Affairs, representing Nicaragua, the Minister Secretary for the Vice President's Policies, Bob Hawkins, for the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, Silver Roswan, who is the CARICOM ambassador, and Sasha Llorenti with me, the Executive Secretary of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, also Raul Icausi, Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs for the Caribbean and the President of the Bank of ALBA. We have also among us the Vice Minister Rander Peña and the Vice Minister Daniela Rodriguez. So this is a very important call. Dear distinguished ministers who have accepted this invitation, because our alliance is facing the effects of an unexpected situation, serious pandemic with more than 2,500,000 deaths because of the pandemic. And we are about to arrive to the first year of the outbreak in our region and in the world of the COVID-19 cases. In our region, we have 660,000 deaths. And when I say our region, I mean the Latin American and the Caribbean region. And all over the last months, the Alliance has been very active. We would like to thank the Executive Secretary, Sasha Llorenti, who has been leading this reactivation. Sasha was appointed by the Chief of Government and State of our Alliance in December last year. And we have witnessed how the Bolivarian Alliance has reactivated in different domains. In the health sector, of course, we created the vaccines bank. We have been making efforts to send vaccines to the Caribbean. An important number of vaccines are going to arrive soon to Dominica, coming from China, and also Cuba, who has been helping us with the rigorosity of the Cuban medicine. They have been present with their brigades, with their doctors and protocols, and have been helping out all the patients of our alliance. Cuba always saving lives and helping us with their capabilities. And we hope that the 2 candidates for the vaccine of Cuba will be soon put at the disposal of the peoples of ALBA and the peoples of Latin America and the region and also the world. We are in the midst of the pandemic. We have started the vaccination processes. Some of them have reassured us, but some others may also make us feel a little bit uncertain, because we have been facing difficult scenarios. We have been feeling the effects of COVID-19 in our world, mainly in tourism, in the Caribbean countries, effects on the production of food, of effects on the imports of goods that are going to be put in the market. So it is very important to work as a whole and to make coordinations. And we have activated different sectors of the alliance, for instance, the health and economy sectors. We held a joint meeting with the political council and ministers of the group, and we also made important decisions in education, because we know that our education system has been put under a lot of stress, as well as stress on our teachers and students, and also at universities. And we have had to implement special measures to move forward. We have been able to do so in the education sector, as I said, and we also held an important meeting in agricultural production, and we also assessed the difficulties that we can see in our countries as a consequence of the economic crisis, which is the result of the pandemic. But we are aware of the potential of the different innovations we have put in place as well. In all this, the coordination of our productive policies, trade policies, transport policies are very important in order to address all the needs in terms of transport and input. And transport has been a sector that has always been at the center of our concerns. Let's look back to the economic zone that was created by our presidents. We once used to talk about Petrocaribe, the implementation of our grand national companies that were working in linkage with the different actors in our countries that do not work out of profit, which is the case of multinational companies, but they work because we believe in a common welfare. We believe in meeting the needs, the most urgent needs of our countries. It is also important to remember the key role of communication. In 15 days, we will hold the meeting ministers of communication. It is very important with the new tools. As President Maduro said, the social networks are dominant networks today, and we need to be at the avant-garde, and with ALBA, UNASUR, CARICOM, CELAC, Mercosur, and other integration mechanisms of our Latin America and the Caribbean, we can develop our own apps, our own social networks in our languages, with our security systems and with our freedoms, so that we can free ourselves from the dictatorship of the mass media from the north, or from the powers. They sometimes erase our tweets or our publications. So this is how they act in capitalism. So how can we reach out to our peoples with our messages, with the truth? How can we make them understand that the Bolivarian Alliance is at their service to satisfy their needs, and that it is not an integration mechanism just for the elite? This is an integration mechanism for the people, not for the political parties. This is an instrument for the grassroots, the social movements. It's a tool for at the service of the poorest, in order to satisfy our needs, so that we can have education, health, food, housing units, and so that we can also develop spiritually, physically, and collectively speaking. The great project of ALBA towards the liberation of our peoples. And it is also our alliance, which is the main driver for the rest of the unity processes in our region. ALBA needs to be a driver for CELAC. We have peoples there from Latin America, Central America, and the Caribbean, and we are all present in the different sub-regions. So let us work in coordination in different realms, such as climate change, which is a key issue for humanity. And we can work together in the different multilateral fora, of course, exerting our sovereignty from our different stances. Let us conduct the necessary work before, during, and after those meetings to have a single voice based on our principles of cooperation, solidarity, complementarity, based on love, because this is what drives us. And this is how we need to articulate our efforts in each one of our countries. But beyond our region, I hope that we will be able to create what Simon Bolivar in the Angostura speech in 1819 identified as the most perfect government system, which is that which ensures the most amount of social happiness, security happiness. This is the terms that he used 200 years ago. And the biggest amount of political freedom as well. You have a declaration, draft declaration, which has been drafted by the different ministries for your approval, and that we will approve, of course, with the necessary modifications, and which we will share with our peoples. And in this document, we are taking the stance of very important principles, such as the rejection of a Cuba blockade, against the intensifying of sanctions, because they dared to put Cuba on a list of countries facilitating terrorism around the world. Also, sanctions against Venezuela. Cuba sanctions and Venezuela sanctions have an impact on Petrocaribe, on the region, on trade. They not only affect Venezuelan and Cuban peoples, they impact the St. Vincent's, Dominicas, Kitts and Nevis's peoples, of Nicaragua's peoples as well. And so we need to be aware that we need to put a stop to those behaviors, those inhumane criminal measures. 1 year ago, on February 13, 2020, Venezuela submitted to the ICC a case, a lawsuit against high officials of the United States because the consequences sanctions have generated in our country, deaths and suffering. This is what they have set themselves, to create suffering and to push for a change of a political system here in Venezuela through their conspiration and conspiracy and their evil intentions. And we also want to felicitate in the document the Bolivian people, because they were able, in reversing in a record time, a coup d'etat, which was a fascist coup d'etat, neo-imperialist coup d'etat that took place in 2019. And 1 year after that coup d'etat, the Bolivian people had recovered the political power, and they did so in a, through the ballots that were followed by the international community, and no one could ever imagine that that was going to happen. And Bolivia did it. Luis Arce and David Choquehuanca were inaugurated again, and they left without no effect the government, the fascist government that had left the ALBA alliance, and after they took power, they came back with a lot of force, a lot of strength. Also, we saw particular movements, and that the scenario, the most bloody battles of humanity. This is what we saw, or we saw something like that in the government of the United States. And we asked the United States to respect the ALBA alliance so that we can have normal relationships under the Charter of the United Nations that will allow us to work together. I hope that, or I know that all the ALBA countries will be ready to accomplish the mandate if we had a reciprocal treatment with the United States based on respect. Our alliance is an alliance for unity, not only for integration, but also for unity. And it has very special principles, a very particular spirit, very different from other integration mechanisms. And we need to deepen that alliance. So I would not like to take much of your time. I know that we need to make important reflections that we are going to hear from our friends and brothers ministers. I am going to give the floor to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Cuba. Bruno, you have the floor. Chef, Chief of Delegation, Sacha Llorentes, Executive Secretary, I would like to salute the initiative of this political council, and I would like to convey special thanks for the numerous tokens of solidarity and support coming from the states of the alliance after the nefarious decision of the administration of Donald Trump when he decided to include Cuba on the list of states supporting terrorism. Over the last months, we have seen a very effective coordination work made by the executive secretary of ALBA-TCP. The results obtained from different authorities of high level in agriculture, education, the the virtual meeting of the social council and political council demonstrate the revitalization of ALBA in a moment where we needed to globalize solidarity and cooperation. This was a concerted and effective response based on complementarity, solidarity, cooperation. This is the kind of response that needs to be the objective of our alliance. The international order has shown its inability to properly respond with efficacy and justice to the sanitary crisis and the socio-economic crisis facing the planet. It is urgent to implement comprehensive policies where the human being is the priority and not the economic gains or political advantages. We have faced coercive unilateral measures against several countries of our alliance that are harmful for the living conditions of our people and are affecting access to health, that are making difficult to have access to material resources which will facilitate help among our peoples and that provoke humanitarian damage. Facing these challenges, we need to defend peace, the right to peace, which is a fundamental priority for our nations within the alliance. We ratify our unflinching solidarity and support to the Bolivarian Revolution and the civil military unity led by President Nicolás Maduro Moros and with the government of reconciliation and national unity led by Commander Daniel Ortega, who in a very courageous manner have resisted all the actions of the former Trump administration. I reiterate our support to the right of the peoples of the Caribbean to receive a fair treatment, a special and differentiated treatment, which is very important to face the climate change negative effects, the unfair financial international system, and the very difficult conditions that are imposed by the pandemic. Distinguished ministers, the economic and financial blockade of the United States against Cuba has been intensified by the pandemic. We denounced this policy and its extraterritorial nature, as well as the inclusion of Cuba on the list of countries supporting terrorism, and also they appeal to initiate lawsuits under the Bolton law and also the subversive actions that seek to provoke changes and destroy the political and social order that our people have decided. It is time to fully revert in a conditional manner the coercive illegal measures that have created so much harm to our people. We are holding this political council, as Jorge Arriaza has just said, after the arrival of a new government to the White House. And we invite the White House to sustain a respectful relationship with our people and with the region, fully respecting the proclamation of the Latin America and the Caribbean region as a region of peace, a relationship based on sovereign equality, the non-interference in domestic affairs, and with the full observance of independence and free will of our peoples. As the president of the Cuban Republic has said, Miguel Diaz-Canel, we ratify the members to the members of ALBA-TCP our willingness to participate as far as it is possible to face the pandemic. Thank you very much.
Sí, muchas gracias, querido ministro.
Thank you, distinguished Minister Bruno. Cuba, with in a very humble manner, they always say that they are at the service of the peoples of our America. And the minister knows that we are fully confident regarding the science, the medicine in Cuba, and mostly in the COVID-19 strength. We know very well that all the capabilities of science and medicine in Cuba, and we support all of the words that you have just delivered. Thank you very much. We will give now the floor to our brother, Foreign Minister of the plurinational state of Bolivia, Rogelio Maita, with the floor. Thank you. Dear Minister Arriaza, greetings to all the high representatives of the peoples, members of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, TCP, which is an integration mechanism, social, economic, and political productive cooperation mechanism that has been built to bottom up without any kind of impositions. It is always important to gather and share with the brothers and sisters from Latin America to debate important topics that are very important to all of us and interest all of us. And we're now in the 21st century, where our nations and the states talk about civilization and express their solidarity. We are witnessing situations that are go against the human rights, like unilateral blockades. And some of the constraints of our peoples that our people have, which is not necessarily our countries of ALBA, but there are other countries who have no accessibility to COVID-19 or to medicines and equipments in order to fight the pandemic. There are countries that believe that they are the owners of the world and the owners of the truth. And they continue imposing at this time in history unilateral measures, economic blockades, and blockades of any kind in order to break governments and to break peoples. And this is unacceptable. And in each international forum and each meeting, we need to address the importance of raising our voices and declaring that that is an unfair treatment, it's unfair, and it is unacceptable. Of course, what we have seen in the United States make us believe that those situations will come to an end, the abusive situations which they impose to others. But I hope that the will of the United Nations will change, and instead of looking for enemies, that they will understand that we all are part and parcel of humanity. COVID-19 and the pandemic that we have been enduring in our planet, which is menacing humanity, has hit us all. Bolivia has not been the exception. We have faced the pandemic in the midst of a coup d'etat, in the midst of a dictatorship that wanted to hide away COVID-19, but they couldn't do it. And we wanted to share with you that this de facto government that left in November last year destroyed our economy, and our people was very vulnerable in the face of the pandemic. We had no medicines. We didn't make any progress in order to have access to vaccines. And I say that we want to share with you this because this government, the government that started in last November, our government that has been elected by the free will of our people has made significant progress. We went from 100 days after the president was inaugurated, thanks to the measures that have been put in place by our brothers and sisters here in the different ministries and public agencies, we have been able to ensure vaccination for our people, for all 100% of our people. And these vaccines are going to arrive in the next months. And we also put in place policies to have access to inputs, and because we were lacking of everything, so we had to also address this problem, the medical supplies that we have now ensured. And just as with the economic blockade, I believe that all those experiences have to make us aware of the importance of demanding equal access to vaccines. We cannot talk about human rights if we don't have equal access. Those countries who like teaching lessons on human rights, well, we have to make them clear that we are going to demand equity access, because there are countries who are buying more vaccines than they need because they are the owners of science and technology, and maybe they want to keep the vaccines for themselves. And all that behavior goes against the lessons they want to teach us of human rights. In Latin America, we are very humble peoples. We will tell them the truth. We are going to claim for justice and to demand that justice be served in this regard. Bolivia is a peaceful state. We have promoted the dialogue and the culture of peace. We respect sovereignty of the states, and we respect the self-determination of the peoples. And this is the reason why our foreign policy has its own identity, which is the identity of the diplomacy of the peoples. We have a popular government made up by the layman, the regular citizen, and this is why our actions are very close to our peoples. And sometimes we can be very different from the diplomacy exerted from the elites. So we salute the alliance and we ratify our commitment with its principles of solidarity, cooperation, complementarity, mutual respect, justice, respect to cultural diversity in harmony with nature. Our alliance is a key mechanism for the revolutionary and progressive movements around the world. We promote cooperation among the peoples of the South, and we support integration and pledged our support to face the COVID-19 crisis by promoting better policies to strengthen the cooperation processes for the benefit of the ALBA peoples.
Querido hermano Rogelio.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words. And I think I speak on behalf of all the peoples, all the governments of our Bolivarian Alliance. You have set an example of true democracy, original democracy, and its consequences will last a long time. You are governing for the people, as President Evo Morales already did. And President Arce has clearly demonstrated that the people have regained power. And you have mentioned the importance of the pandemic and how Bolivia was without protection. the coup leaders has not thought of acquiring vaccines and protect the people. Today, on the opposite, on the contrary, this government has made huge strides in improving the situation to protect the people against the pandemic. And ALBA in the international forum should denounce many policies. We are now going to give the floor our Minister for Dominica, Kenneth Darus. You have the floor.
To place on the record its support for all the comments and statements made by my colleagues and comrades before me. We would also like to place on the record our deepest appreciation for the continued support received from the ALBA countries, in particular, the Republic of Cuba and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela during this past trying year for assisting us in our fight against the SARS-CoV-19 pandemic. Mr. President, the timely arrival of the Henry Reeves Brigade from Cuba was very instrumental in our fight against the COVID-19. Plus, the supplies received from Venezuela all assisted Dominica in having that spectacular record of 0 COVID-19 related deaths to date. We would also represent a record of a special thanks to ALBA in the assistance during the distribution and transportation of the much needed vaccines to Dominica and the rest of the OECS countries, vaccines that are so essential in the fight against COVID-19, especially to be used in first instance, of course, by our frontline health workers. Dominica too would like to strongly condemn the measures meted out against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and Nicaragua, and the urgent upliftment of the decade-old economic blockade against Cuba, and we call for its immediate lifting. We also condemn the description of Cuba as a state sponsor of terrorism. And on the contrary, Dominica recognizes and applauds the tremendous humanitarian effort that Cuba has made in assisting other countries in their healthcare systems, an effort which has been brought to the fore, has been brought to light during this COVID-19 pandemic. We would also like to congratulate the Republic of Cuba on the most recent success in the development of the coronavirus vaccine, Soberana Dos. Again, this is another example that in spite of all that has been leveled against the country and its people, the 5 decades-long economic blockade, that Cuba continues to demonstrate its ability to rise to the occasion, and in doing so, still be in a position to assist others in need. Señor Presidente, por parte de la Mancomunidad de Dominica,
on behalf of the Commonwealth of Dominica,
decimos a esta reunión
we want to convey to this meeting
que siempre estaremos en solidaridad
we'll
con los
always
países,
convey our solidarity
con los países que forman la organización
to
de ALBA.
the countries, the member countries of ALBA.
Y siempre estamos agradecidos
And we are thankful
por todo que ustedes han hecho
for your support
en el desarrollo de nuestro país,
in order
Dominica.
to assist us to develop our nation, Dominica.
Que viva la República de Cuba.
Long live the Republic of Cuba.
Que viva la República Bolivariana
Long live
Venezolana.
The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela.
Y que viva ALBA. Muchísimas gracias.
Long live ALBA. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Kenneth. Que viva, que viva.
Thank you, Kenneth. Long live ALBA. Long live the ALBA-TCP countries, and long live
Soy un producto orgulloso de la educación cubana. Soy un médico. Yeah.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Así, estaba diciendo que soy un producto orgulloso del sistema de educación de Cuba.
Chet Green.
Yo estudié medicina en Cuba.
Perdón, sí está hablando el ministro de...
Gracias.
Bueno, las videoconferencias y la tecnología que...
I'm so sorry, the video conferences are so complicated, but we meet again in person with our vaccines. And we're going to listen now to Chet Green, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Migration and Commerce of Antigua and Barbuda. You have the floor, Chet. Distinguished colleagues, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today on the occasion of this 21st meeting of the ALBA-TCP of the Political Council. Allow me to make my address in English.
Distinguished representatives, we find ourselves today in a protracted situation of challenge and of uncertainty. The COVID-19 pandemic poses the greatest threat to public health in recent history. It has disrupted economies and livelihoods and has deepened the pre-existing social inequalities. Moreover, the pandemic has been yet another shock for inherently vulnerable small island developing states, such as Antigua and Barbuda and other ALBA nations. It is in difficult times like these that we appreciate even more the importance of ALBA-TCP as a regional development mechanism which promotes engagement and fraternal ties between Latin America and Caribbean nations. It is imperative that we continue to coordinate our responses to the multiple crises triggered by the pandemic so that we may build back and build back better. Resilience, inclusion, and sustainability, including the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, are key to shaping our post-pandemic response and indeed our future. In addition, Antigua and Barbuda, like other ALBA states, remains acutely aware of the urgent need for greater climate resilience. We must strengthen climate-smart agriculture and agriculture value chains, as well as mobilize finance for adaptation and for mitigation. Climate variability and extreme natural disasters, such as Category 5+ hurricanes, have posed serious threats to the economic and environmental viability of the countries of our region. Although we presently find ourselves tackling the devastating effects of COVID-19, we must not lose sight of the need for more effective climate action, as our efforts today have far-reaching implications in terms of present and future generations. Antigua and Barbuda, my dear colleagues, therefore takes this opportunity to condemn the US imposition of unilateral measures on the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the Republic of Nicaragua, especially amid the throes of the COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, my country rejects the notion that Cuban humanitarian assistance being regarded or connected to a trafficking of persons. We completely, totally, unreservedly scoff at, detest, and reject any such assertions by anyone, anywhere on earth. The Cuban Medical Brigade operates in 39 countries across the world. Without the willing help of the Cuban personnel, my own country, Antigua and Barbuda, and many other countries within our hemisphere would not have been able to contain the COVID-19 pandemic or treat infected persons. We express, therefore, profound appreciation to the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela for the support extended during the COVID-19 pandemic, for the provision of medical supplies to combat the effects of COVID-19, as well as for airlift of our students, repatriating them from the Republic of Cuba. We also express our deep appreciation to the Republic of Cuba, which provided assistance to Antigua and Barbuda through the arrival of the Henry Reeve Brigade, those specialists trained in infectious disease containment, who have gone beyond the call of duty to fight against the coronavirus pandemic here in Antigua and Barbuda. At present, in Antigua and Barbuda, the total number of persons with laboratory confirmed COVID-19 is 701 cases. This figure is inclusive of 416 active cases. Meanwhile, we have 1,000 persons with confirmed COVID-19 cases. This figure is inclusive of 416 active cases. Meanwhile, we have 1,000 persons with confirmed COVID-19 cases. This figure is inclusive of 416 active cases. Meanwhile, we have 1,000 persons with confirmed COVID-19 cases. This figure is inclusive of 416 active cases. very the provision of vaccines to inoculate our population. Distinguished colleagues, we must continue to strengthen ALBA and ALBA's response to the pandemic, as well as the climate change. Now is the time for us to think ahead and to imagine how we want our region to be. Now is the time for greater solidarity, for greater union, greater unity amongst our nations as we build back and build back better. I wish to assure you, my colleagues, that my country, Antigua and Barbuda, stands ready to coordinate efforts with the ALBA members so that we can attain this vision for a greener, more inclusive and resilient Latin America and the Caribbean. Colegas, Presidente, es un orgullo, un honor.
Colleagues, President, it is an honor and a pleasure to represent on behalf of Castro Brown and Antigua and Barbuda our participation in this meeting, which is so important. Thank you very much. We are not getting to the foreign minister. I think something is wrong with the microphone. We cannot get the foreign minister. In the circumstances, and thanks to technology, and thanks to Gaston Brown, Prime Minister, as Chet Green said, we need to bear this in mind. And we have already discussed this many times with the Secretary General of the Alliance. Our countries of the ALBA-TCP, we need to coordinate our common policies as much as possible in the UN, within CELAC, in Geneva, in Vienna, in Kenya, wherever. We need to have the capacities to coordinate and as much as possible to have joint policies based on our principles. Now, we're going to give the floor to Oliver Joseph, Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade, and CARICOM Affairs. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. It is indeed a pleasure for me to represent Grenada at this meeting. I bring you greetings from the government and people of Grenada. Let me begin by stating our government and people appreciation to the people of Cuba for their support in the fight against COVID-19. The medical team in Grenada did an excellent job to the point where we only had one death. For the last 28 days, there were 0 active cases. And so we want to place on record our deep appreciation to the government and people of Cuba. And to our friends of Venezuela, the government and people of Venezuela, for the very generous assistance in our help to purchase vaccine for our people. We have started the rollout of our vaccine program, and to date, the response has been very good indeed. This organization meeting today is very timely, as the ALBA-TCP has a critical role to play during this very trying time caused by COVID-19. All our member states have been affected. In the case of Grenada, our GDP fell by 12%, and recurrent revenue fell by 50%. It is because of friends like countries in ALBA gave us hope to continue our fight in this struggle. These new challenges caused by COVID need a collective response. We cannot do it on our own. And therefore, more than ever, we need TCP ALBA to assist us in moving forward. We strongly urge the immediate lifting of the unilateral measures imposed by the United States which prevent the affected countries from fighting against COVID-19. Despite our financial situation, it is difficult to access concessionary financing from the international financial institution. And I use this opportunity to call on all ALBA members to join in one voice in calling for the lifting of the stringent financial measures imposed by small island developing states, such as Grenada, to access concessionary financing. At this time, we cannot borrow to increase our debt. So what we need in the international community is concessionary financing. And we think that ALBA can play a role in assisting if we all speak with one voice. So we are committed to this organization, and we look forward to working together in building this movement. I thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Brother Joseph, Minister of Grenada. Greetings to Brother Keith Mitchell. And you send a clear message regarding the need to go together, united, with a single voice. No country, even Lula, when he was president of Brazil, he said, not even Brazil, despite its size and millions of inhabitants, can do it alone, cannot face these challenges and engage with the world we have inherited, especially in the midst of a pandemic. Thank you very much, Grenada. And now we give the floor to the Minister of State for International Affairs of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the land of Ralph Gonsalves, Minister Keisa Melissa Peters. Thank you. You have the floor.
Minister, we can't hear you.
No. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is indeed an honor for me to address this 21st meeting of the ALBA Political Council for the very first time as Minister of State with responsibility for foreign affairs and foreign trade. Permit me, Mr. Chairman, to extend on behalf of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines our warmest and fraternal greetings to you and the government and people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, and to applaud you for your exemplary leadership of the Political Council. I wish also to extend heartiest congratulations to the new Executive Secretary of ALBA-TCP, Ambassador Sasha Laurenti Solis, on his appointment to lead this important regional organization in a time of enormous challenges facing our countries. In the same breath, we welcome back the plurinational state of Bolivia to the ALBA family. I wish to assure you, gentlemen, of the continued support of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, resting on the confidence that you would continue to provide stellar leadership during these challenging times. Mr. Chair, we meet at a most critical time as a political council with an ambitious agenda to accomplish. The multiplicity of issues before us all demand urgent attention as we seek to create greater opportunities for our people. But urgent and important as these may be, many of them have now been superseded by the immediate health, security, and social economic challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. A little over a year ago, when ALBA-TCP celebrated its 15th anniversary in Havana in December 2019, The coronavirus was just a localized health issue in a small region in China, far away from our shores. No one could have ever perceived that 1 year later, the scale and impact of the COVID-19 pandemic would have been as devastating as it is today to the lives and livelihoods of the 7 billion people who inhabit this planet, especially the most vulnerable and disadvantaged. Mr. Chair, it is not lost on us in St. Vincent and the Grenadines that the response of ALBA and its institutions, and particularly so, the response of Venezuela and Cuba, as well as the ALBA Bank, has been nothing short of heroic and exemplary. It has indeed been a lesson in solidarity and cooperation. Though themselves battered by the ravages of COVID-19, Cuba and Venezuela have shared with St. Vincent and the Grenadines material and technical resources, as well as personnel to assist in the fight against the pandemic. The ALBA Bank has opened a window of financing for the OECS member states of ALBA to be able to access the available vaccines to immunize our population. And for this, we are indeed grateful. On behalf of the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, I wish to place on record our sincerest and deepest appreciation for the assistance that we have received from both Cuba and Venezuela in these difficult times. And I pause here to say to this gathering that in light of the assistance St. Vincent and the Grenadines received from the Cuban Medical Brigade, the Henry Reeve Brigade, on the 26th of January 2021, as Minister of State, I lodged a nomination with the Norwegian Nobel Prize Committee to nominate the Henry Reeve Medical Brigade for the 2021 Nobel Peace Prize. And we wish the Medical Brigade all the best in the selection process. Mr. Chair, the COVID-19 pandemic has spared no one. It is a global public health issue in all its dimensions, which requires joint action at the international level. It could have been a rallying point for triggering humanitarian action and an equitable distribution of the available vaccines. Yet, illegal sanctions and economic blockade on ALBA member countries remain, despite calls within the United Nations system for those to be lifted. As is customary, St. Vincent and the Grenadines continues to add its voice to this ground shell of opposition and these sanctions, which do nothing more than create hardships for millions of disadvantaged and vulnerable people in those sanctioned countries. Mr. Chair, the enduring principles upon which ALBA was founded are the bedrock of its existence today. ALBA is a force for good and continues to be the embodiment of solidarity and fraternal relations based on respect for the sovereignty and independence of every constituent member. In its 16 years of existence, however, its member states have been subject to external aggression and intimidation, some of which are threatened by those powers who appear to hold little regard for international law and brazenly ignore the principles of the United Nations Charter, which governs relations between states. The veritable medieval siege and crippling sanctions imposed on Cuba and Venezuela unilaterally and illegally under international law have been designed not only to break the spirit and resolve of both peoples, but also to destroy the noble ideals and possibilities of this new form of integration. ALBA-TCP dispelled the notion that cooperation for the development of small and developing states of the South was only viable if sanctioned under the banner of neoliberalism. Upholding international law is an existential issue for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. As a small island developing state constrained with narrow borders, we owe our existence as a sovereign independent nation state to a universally accepted body of international norms and principles founded in the United Nations Charter. The only force on which we depend to safeguard our democracy, our sovereignty, and our independence is international law, without which small states such as ours will be shunned aside with impunity and will not be able to survive within the international community of nations. St. Vincent and the Grenadines therefore reiterates its support for the process of dialogue and reconciliation in Venezuela. We reaffirm our commitment to democracy, respect for human rights, and the rights of Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua, or any other country for that matter, to determine their future without coercion, political, and economic blackmail and threats of intervention from other countries. Our responsibility and the debt we owe to humanity reside in a commitment to exercise our rights as independent sovereign nations coming together under the umbrella of the ALBA-TCP to pursue our own development in the interest of our peoples. ALBA is about solidarity. It is about peace and stability. It is about South-South cooperation, multilateralism. It is about complementarity and sharing. As the standard bearer for external relations, the Political Council of ALBA-TCP is now challenged in this new dispensation to recalibrate, to refresh its mandate, and to create pathways for development amidst the uncertainty of the next 12 months. Finally, Mr. Chairman, before us for approval is an 18-point statement of the Ministers of Foreign Affairs of ALBA-TCP, covering a range of regional and international issues of great relevance. While as a body, we reaffirm our commitment to having these issues ventilated, most importantly will be how, as a regional integration mechanism, we position ourselves to be able to translate the written word to action for the betterment of our respective populations. Mr. Chairman, I thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Ministra Keisel.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Kaisel. Extraordinary speech, very heartfelt speech that reflects the position of St. Vincent and the Grenadines and of the Caribbean countries. Greetings to Ralph Gonsalves. You talked about a small island, developing island, but it is very big, as big because today it is a member of the Security Council elected by the vast majority of the General Assembly of the UN, and he is exerting an extraordinary role, not only on behalf of the ALBA countries, CARICOM countries, and Caribbean countries, but on behalf of the peoples of the world. Thank you very much for your speech. And I wanted also to extend to all the Caribbean countries a recognition to the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago as the President of CARICOM. Before the Atlantic Council some days ago, he raised his voice against the coercive unilateral measures in our Americas, and we would like to thank him for asking for the lifting of the sanctions against the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. He raised his voice on behalf of the Caribbean countries and on behalf of our country. But I wanted just to say this so that all the countries of ALBA and CARICOM share also our appreciation. Let's give the word to Borocas, the Secretary Minister for National Policies of the presidency of the Republic of Nicaragua, of our brother Commandant Daniel Ortega. Minister, you have the floor. Thank you very much, Minister. Dear Minister of the Political Council, receive the revolutionary greetings of our Commander Daniel Ortega and of Rosario Moreno Zambrano as the Vice President. They want to convey their best wishes for the success of this council at a very important juncture, critical juncture of the human history. In 2021, the biggest threat for humanity was the COVID-19, climate change, and all the losses that we have suffered from these problems. Also, the attempt of the empire to impose their hegemonistic project. The COVID-19 pandemic has had a very nefarious impact on the Caribbean and Latin America, mostly for the most vulnerable nations. And the GDP of Latin America and the Caribbean fell to minus 9.9% in 2020, which represents a loss of 10 years in growth. The number of poor rise to 191 million, which takes us back 15 years ago. And the cases of COVID were 96 million. 2.7 businesses were closed, and local informal labor reached 51%. The most countries had not made important investment in public health and making accessible to all the population, with the exception of Cuba, Venezuela, and Nicaragua. In the case of Nicaragua, President Ortega reinstated the constitutional right to the people to education and free healthcare. The first day of the new government, he built from 2007 18 new public hospitals, which represent 70 in total, 33 more than the next Latin American country. And from 2000 to 345, the health workers went from 22,000 to 36,000, and health expenditure doubled. Nicaragua in 2020 was better equipped to face the pandemic and than if it had occurred in 2006. It was prepared for the pandemic 1 month before the first case appeared. As a result of all this is that Nicaragua has had 2.7 deaths per 100,000 inhabitants, which is 27.8 in other countries of Latin America. Nicaragua is the country where exports increased the most in 2020, an increase of more than 38%. The region fell in 20%. It is clear that the increase of gold exports contributed to this, but the agricultural inputs were much more surprising. In some exports attained more than 50%, and cheese in more than 28%. Nicaraguan peasants were producing food for our population and for the neighboring countries during the pandemic last year. Climate change, ever since 2018, when the parts per million of greenhouse effect superseded the foreseen percentages, we started feeling visible consequences in Barbuda, Dominica, Bahamas, San Martin, Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. In Central America, the hurricanes impacted in the zone on November, and the hurricane reached Category 5, creating great damage. In Nicaragua, we had important losses amounting to $738 million, which represents 6.8% of the GDP. Due to the losses, Nicaragua will submit 3 submissions and the climate change in Scotia in November 2021. First, to declare Central America and the Caribbean as a highly vulnerable zone to climate change. Science backs us. Number 2, to elevate the losses and damage at the same level of in the convention, the Climate Change Convention, to have access to financing investments, including the Green Fund for fighting climate change, because there is no current investment in this regard. Number 3, climate justice with reparations. And for those who have caused climate change, can pay to those who suffered the consequences, such as China. Some say that this is a very radical proposal. I don't think so. This figure is being used in the law of the United States and the United Kingdom. And also it was used in the Napoleonic code, which will be a lawsuit for losses and damages. In order to stop the high temperatures of climate change, it is necessary to conform a great green alliance. The 20 countries which are responsible of 80% of the total of emissions needed to achieve reductions. And the other countries with lesser emissions, which represent 2% of the total world emissions, do not have carbon to reduce. Nicaragua is emitting 0.02% of the carbon emissions. Countries of the South need to also pull our efforts to the capturing of CO2, mostly integrated lands, and to reduce deforestation. These are our common responsibilities, but differentiated within the Big Green Alliance. Also, in this century, the US empire and its cronies have waged wars against Syria, Yemen, Afghanistan. There have been millions of victims, handicapped, injured, and refugees. There have been killings with drones in several Middle East countries. including the killing, extrajudicial killing of the Iranian General Soleimani while he was visiting another locality. And there have been attempts of killing presidents in Latin America and the Caribbean, Venezuela in 2002, Haiti in 2004, Honduras 2009, Ecuador 2010, Paraguay 2012, Brazil 2016, Nicaragua 2018, and Bolivia 2019. All those coups d'etats or attempt of coups d'etats were against the left-wing progressive governments without no exception. These actions are an intervention, a blatant intervention on domestic policies. The United States, the European Union, the United Kingdom, Canada, and recently also Europe have imposed coercive unilateral measures against our countries, such as Nicaragua, Cuba, and Venezuela. And the imposition of the unilateral coercive measures against institutions and persons is illegal. To apply these measures in the midst of the pandemic intensifies its illegality and they constitute crimes against humanity. The only legal sanctions are those imposed by the Security Council of the United Nations. The United States is also imposing extraterritorial laws, and it is rejecting the application of international law in their territory. They also apply measures against third persons who are criminalized while because they do not abide by the extraterritorial illegal measures. And this is possible due to the bank dictatorship exerted by the United States over the system of banking transfer systems. 39 countries with more than 2 billion inhabitants have been victim of the illegal and arbitrary measures, coercive unilateral measures as a ways of aggression of the empire. If the international community is engaged with human rights, multilateralism, the rule of law, and equality among all the peoples, it needs to ask for the immediate stop of these illegal measures in the midst of the pandemic because they constitute crimes against humanity. Thank you very much for your attention. Minister Polotis, extraordinary speech. Thank you very much. He covered all the topics which are relevant to our region. On behalf of the government of Nicaragua, he talked about the climate change, and you talked about concrete proposals that Nicaragua wants to make in the COP26 in Glasgow in November this year. In the timetable of actions, we have that April 26th, we will have a meeting of our ministerial meetings of environment, eco-socialism, all that is related to climate change and environment. And I hope we will bring joint proposals from the alliance to the COP26. I remember the battle by President Chavez and President Morales in Copenhagen. They didn't want to give them the floor, and they took the floor and they made a statement on behalf of the southern countries. I hope that it is going to be so for the next meeting. The next speech is by Sidney Osborne, the ambassador for CARICOM of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, honorable ministers of foreign affairs, heads of delegations. I want at the outset to convey greetings from our Minister of Foreign Affairs and Premier of Nevis, the Honorable Mark Grantley. And just to assure you that not only he stands, but the Federation stands in solidarity with this particular organization. His absence today is occasioned by Cabinet, because Cabinet meets every Monday. And more so because we are rolling out our vaccine at the present time. And today received an additional shipment. And so that is really occupying his time. But as I said before, he stands in solidarity and support of ALBA-TCP. On behalf of the government and people of the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, we are pleased to participate in this, the 21st meeting of ALBA-TCP Political Council through this virtual arrangement. While the world continues to be ravished by the COVID-19 pandemic, we offer sincerest condolences to the governments and people of this region that have lost loved ones, not just in our countries, but in the diaspora as well. The multidimensional crisis exacerbated by the pandemic reminds the global South that it is an imperative to cling even closer together. Economies have been decimated, societies have been torn apart, and a number of political structures in this region have been shaken. These adverse effects have inflicted proportionally more pain in our region due to our open economies and dependence on foreign exchange derived from tourism and manufacture. St. Kitts and Nevis, as you are aware, closed its borders in March last year and only reopened them at the end of October last year. During these months, there were no visitors, no tourist arrivals, and a carefully managed process for returning nationals. Since reopening, all travelers are required to present a negative RT-PCR test prior to receiving approval to travel. All visitors and nationals alike are mandated to complete a travel form. All our nationals returning and visitors staying for more than 14 days are required to spend a quarantine period of 14 days at a government-approved site. They will be tested again on the 14th day, and once negative, will be permitted to integrate into society. To date, St. Kitts and Nevis has recorded 41 confirmed cases of COVID-19, inclusive of one active case today, who is now in isolation, and thankfully we can record at this time no deaths. Mr. Chairman, the government of St. Kitts and Nevis stands in solidarity with the government and people of the Republic of Cuba, who have had to endure decades of sanctions and more recently a redesignation without evidence as a state sponsor of terrorism. As a result, St. Kitts and Nevis urges reconsideration of the designation as the facts and evidence do not support this action. Cuba's resilience offers hope for the region, particularly at this time. Mr. Chair, the delegation of St. Kitts and Nevis remains hopeful for the future as we have witnessed the charity being displayed by developing countries at this time with offering N95 masks, COVID-19 tests, thermometer temperature guns, and other medical equipment such as ventilators, and more recently, donations of vaccines. We as a government and people would like to express our appreciation to the government and people of India for its most recent donation of 20,000 vaccines to the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. A similar donation was made to other CARICOM countries. We are proud of the developing countries who, out of goodwill and in a spirit of fraternity, have seen the need to share. Today, we call upon developed countries to do likewise. Tangible donations of this nature are powerful expressions of South-South and triangular cooperation, which augur well for relations among developing countries. The government of St. Kitts and Nevis takes this opportunity to thank the ALBA Bank for its contributions from its humanitarian fund to ALBA OECS members towards natural disasters and for its granting of non-reimbursable financing for the acquisition of vaccines to fight COVID-19. We look forward to future discussions at the technical level, which would lead to the rollout of vaccine and other tangible forms of support under the banner of ALBA-TCP. We're therefore grateful for these generous offers and tangible displays of solidarity to the government and peoples of the region. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, my brother Ambassador Sidney Osborne, for your participation. I think that many of our spokespersons and ministers today have expressed their appreciation to the Bank of ALBA, who is making important efforts. The Bank of ALBA is a powerful mechanism, a powerful tool, and we need to tap into that possibility. We would like to invite those members of ALBA who are not part of a Bank of ALBA to join, because those who already make part of the ALBA institution can tell you all the advantages that it has. This is not just a regular bank. This is a bank characterized by solidarity, by the promotion of projects who really have an impact on peoples and meet the needs of our peoples. And in the midst of this pandemic, the bank couldn't have done anything, has done what it had to do. In the Bank of ALBA, we have made available to our partners investment mechanisms, the creation of the humanitarian fund to address health problems, the bank of vaccines, all these initiatives are going to be fostered by the Bank of ALBA. And soon we will reactivate Petrocaribe. I would like now to give the floor to the president of the Bank of ALBA and the vice minister for the Caribbean of the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry, Raul Licausi. Thank you, Minister, distinguished foreign ministers. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome you, to congratulate you for this meeting that takes place at our highest political body in our mechanism. You have been very concise. In a very short time, you have expressed your ideas, so I will try to do the same. I would like to seize the opportunity to congratulate once again the new executive secretary of ALBA, who has relaunched the secretariat with a lot of dynamism. And this is part of the new dynamics that we want to implement within ALBA. Once again, thank you very much. The pandemic has had a negative impact on the economies and on the world development, and it has impacted mostly the less developed countries, and it has intensified the contradictions of the hegemonic capitalist system. In this context, ALBA has strengthened regional integration as a tool to overcome the current juncture and to make a contribution to the development and unity of our people. The Bank of ALBA, as a financing different institution, in its 12 years of history, has demonstrated being an important financial institution that constitutes today a lively space within the initiatives of the Bolivarian Alliance of the Americas. We can say today that the Bank of ALBA is an institution that can accompany countries in their financial investments to attain development, and it also faces the same challenges of the countries that belong to the bank. In this pandemic, our bank has been very active, has been seeking for solutions in this very tiring time for our economies, and we have been always open to all the proposals you have made. Today, we have followed carefully the different addresses, and I would like to mention a couple of things. First, the responses the bank in the face of the pandemic, such as the creation of the humanitarian fund. We said that we wanted to create a humanitarian fund, and we proposed the creation of the humanitarian fund. It was approved in June 2020, and it is a financial tool to pool resources from the private and public institutions. We have disbursed resources and loans to the purchase of vaccines of the Eastern Caribbean countries. We also have the Health ALBA program, and we have provided medical equipment and vaccines to ALBA. Our bank has also made progress in the financing with some countries that have difficulties in getting financing and for them to buy vaccines. We also have the ALBA Food Program, and we have provided not only technical consultancy, but we have made available resources, and our teams are already working with the different countries in this regard. We held the meeting of agriculture, which was very productive, and we set up a financing fund that is already being executed.
Also, the intra-ALBA transport through financing to Liat and Conviasa to foster commercial relations. Also, we are working on financial stability of the member states with the moratorium on the loans. This, on top of other projects financed for the region, these are facts and realities. However, we'd like to use this opportunity to introduce, other than the achievements, we still have some challenges and future perspectives. I would like to share some ideas that could help in developing policies fostering the integration. First of all, to ensure free circulation of funds and of goods. Since the 2008 crisis, the countries of the region has experienced the reduction of funds because of the lack of bank correspondence due to the lack of interest, sometimes given the small size, and other for over compliance with some financial restrictions associated to prejudices against some members of the alliance. This restricts the possibilities of the developing reliable exchanges. So we need to counteract the financial blockade through the implementation of mechanisms of compensation, commercial compensation in local currencies. Also, the current experience with the vaccine bank in, could be the basis for future commercial compensation of products. Second, countries should help us to project ALBA and ALBA Bank towards supra-regional bodies to bring funds to the region. In the future economy, it is essential to use in an efficient manner the scarce resources destined for for development. In this regard, we need to join national and grand national efforts to attract third-party funds or multilateral areas that could finance the development initiatives. We could mention three action lines that ALBA-TCP could take up in order to find international financing. First, to back projects to improve the capacities and infrastructure of physical connection of the region, to back infrastructure, energy for projects in the region, and to endorse projects in order to mitigate the effects of climate change and natural disasters in the region. Once the governments move forward in this direction, the ALBA Bank can then be the regional financial institution to be the tool, the financial tool to execute the regional funds where these funds will be allocated. Thirdly, to strengthen the ALBA Bank from the national level, from the national capital of those countries that have signed our contract. We have $140 million of paid-in capital and subscribed capital of $800 million. We've been able to develop a functional financial space. However, these funds are not enough to face the challenges we have. The economic contraction, the constant attacks by Washington against the Bolivarian countries and ALBA countries through UCMs clearly showed that the capital injection is not realistic in the current situation. However, we call upon to redouble efforts in order to find creative options enabling the institution to participate in local economies and grow hand in hand with the member countries at the speed and dimension required in order to move forward with this regional integration. Therefore, dear ministers and participants, would like to reiterate our invitation to Grenada and St. Kitts and Nevis to adhere to our constitutive treaty so you can take advantage to all the opportunities that we can offer. Thank you very much, and we are fully available to any requirements you might have. Thank you very much, Raul Licausi, President of the ALBA Bank, just enumerating the concrete actions ALBA Bank has taken to profit our countries amidst this pandemic. We need to underline and we insist the more participation we have within the ALBA Bank, the more we can then devise mechanisms in order to support those sectors of our economy and of our society that need this most. This is a great tool. The humanitarian fund created this year or last year, really, at the end of 2020, it's of the essence. ALBA could, as Chavez did in the past, to raise to the multilateral system to create an international humanitarian fund. Commander Chavez referred to percentages of 1% of the world military expenditure. We need to reassess those figures, but those are new tools that are required in the multilateral system. I would like to give the floor to our Executive Secretary. And before, I would like to recall that we have had the meetings on agriculture, health, education. And today we are organizing the Political Council on March the 15th. We're going to have a meeting with the senior authorities on telecommunication on March, the senior authorities regarding women and gender, and April 12th, the Economic Complementarity Council should meet. It will be the 11th council, and 26th of April, the ministers of environment, in order ahead of the COP26. In May, the think tanks of ALBA-TCP, they are going to meet also. And we still need to set a date to a meeting on culture of the ministers of culture in October. We are going to revive the Council of Social Movements. Hopefully we could hold that meeting in Cochabamba in Bolivia. And also, once we fulfill this agenda, once we carry out the concrete proposals made during these meetings, we also could suggest our heads, prime ministers, president, to hold a summit of the Bolivarian Alliance for our Peoples of our America. So I give the floor to the Executive Secretary to make comments on top of reading the final minutes of this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Foreign Minister. Cordial greetings to all of you. Thank you so much for your support and participation in these meetings, which are vital. We are building together a different model to face the pandemic. ALBA, through concrete facts, through the solidarity demonstrated by our brothers from Cuba and Venezuela in the Eastern Caribbean, the creation of a vaccine bank and medicine bank are examples that should also be reflected around the world so we can together face these and many other challenges. I'd like to read the draft declaration of the 21st meeting of the Political Council of ALBA-TCP that will be put to your consideration. The ministers of foreign affairs of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of Our America, Treaty of Commerce of the Peoples, the occasion of the 21st meeting of the Political Council held virtually on March the 1st, 2021. We ratify our commitment with genuine Latin American and Caribbean integration, enabling us to confront together the imperialist thirst for domination that threaten the peace and stability, multilateralism, and the principles of international law, including the right of free determination, sovereignty, territorial integrity, the non-intervention in the internal affairs of the states, as well as the prohibition of the use and the threat of use of force and the peaceful resolution of controversies signed in the proclamation of Latin America and the Caribbean as a zone of peace. Second, we denounce the domineering and warmongering policies of Western nations, especially the United States, that in the midst of a profound crisis generated by the COVID-19, persevere in the attempts to break sovereign states such as the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Syrian Arab Republic. We recall the call of Secretary General of the United Nations to cease world fire in all the corners of the world. Third, we demand the immediate lifting of the UCM imposed by the United States that hamper affected nations to address COVID-19, especially the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and Nicaragua. Fourth, we reiterate the call made by the Special Rapporteur of the United Nations regarding the negative impact of the unilateral coercive measures in the enjoyment of human rights. Mrs. Alina Duhan, for the United States, European Union, and other states lift the unilateral sanctions imposed on the people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. Fifth, we call upon the immediate and unconditional lifting of the economic, commercial, and financial blockade of the United States against Cuba, and we demand the end of the possibility to present a lawsuit in U.S. court according to the Title 3 of the Helms-Burton Law. We reiterate the strong condemnation of ALBA-TCP against all the acts, methods, and terrorist practices in all its forms and manifestations, including those cases where states are directly or indirectly involved, which is totally unjustifiable, whatever the motivations, considerations, or factors invoked. Seventh, we firmly condemn the characterization of Cuba as a country fostering terrorism by the US administration and the inclusion in the spurious list of the State Department of that country. Eighth, we manifest our deep regret for the mortal victims of the pandemic in the world and especially in our region. Faced with the devastating impacts of the multiple crises generated by COVID-19, it is necessary to have a caring, coordinated, and joint response to ensure inclusive and resilient recovery of our economies, enabling us to strengthen our sustainable development of our people and the eradication of poverty. Ninth, we recognize that all peoples, in particular in the Caribbean and the Central American isthmus, we are highly vulnerable to the climate change effects and natural disasters. Various countries of the Alliance suffered recently the effects of severe meteorological events. Therefore, the ALBA-TCP countries commit to continue defending the importance of recognizing damages and losses in the multilateral financing processes within the climate change system. Tenth, we reaffirm that the unjust international financial system and the inclusion of a list of non-cooperative jurisdictions endanger small economies of the Caribbean nations. This situation aggravates because of the pandemic, since there is a drop in the growth of tourism, a source of revenue for these countries, and the limited access to additional financial mechanisms. We demand for them a just, special, and differentiated treatment. 11th, we need to work united in order to foster extensive vaccination against COVID-19 as the world's health good. We need an equitable and solidary distribution, protecting the poor and more vulnerable. Our peoples have the right to have access to all technologies and health products which are essential, which are of good quality, safe, efficacious to respond to the pandemic, and that the hurdles that impede the access to those should be lifted in accordance with international treaties. We denounce the hoarding of vaccines against COVID-19 conducted by the most powerful countries in the world. 13, we insist on the urgency to address the needs, special needs of the countries of the Caribbean, for them to benefit from cooperation to prevent and to address the pandemic. We recognize the large effort of the health professionals, scientific and humanitarian personnel to fight the COVID-19 pandemic in various regions in the world, to defend the right to health and life, exposing the ill lives. We underline the role of the WHO to fight the pandemic. 15th, we recognize in particular the contribution made by the Republic of Cuba in front of the pandemic, despite the complex circumstances because of the escalation of the economic, commercial, financial blockade by the US state and the campaign of these countries to discredit and to undermine the international medical cooperation provided by Cuba in dozens of countries and territories benefiting millions of people. 16, we congratulate and recognize the humanist and altruist work of the Henry Reeve Cuban medical contingent and its contribution to address coronavirus in ALBA-TCP and other nations in the world. We welcome, therefore, the various initiatives to formally present the candidacy of this contingent to the Peace Nobel Prize for 2021. 17th, we congratulate the Bolivian people for the recovery of democracy, thanks to the unity and the work of social organizations and original indigenous peoples and peasants. This has translated in major progress, especially in the health sector, during the first 100 days of the government led by Luis Arce Catacora and Vice President David Choquehuanca. 18th, we reiterate our commitment as members of ALBA-TCP to address the needs and to ensure food provision to vulnerable populations, stressing that the production and distribution systems of food are of the essence to sustainability and to attain the sustainable development goals. 19th, we welcome the agreement signed during the recent meetings of high authorities in the field of health, agriculture, and education that revive our alliance and demonstrate that only through unity we can address the major threats that affect us. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brother Executive Secretary of ALBA-TCP. He has spoken at this crucial moment, a political declaration read by the Executive Secretary to defend multilateralism, peace, the end of conflict, against blockades, against the UCMs, against terrorism, condemning the fact that the Republic of Cuba has been included in the list of countries sponsoring terrorism, which is totally ridiculous. It is so absurd as a US president has ever won a peace prize. And we support the Henry Reeves Brigade from our societies more than our governments for them to receive this award. Men and women of Cuba totally devoted to help people around the world. We are in favor of joint proposals regarding climate change, in favor of financial justice, coordination for the vaccination, condemning this unfair distribution of vaccines. Countries with 7 times the number of vaccines they truly require, and they have hoarded that vaccines. And our recognition to healthcare people around the world living their lives to protect people against the pandemic, especially in Cuba. They have made a major effort to protect people against the pandemic, to congratulate Bolivia for recovering democracy and the full exercise of democratic means to attain power. The food support and nutrition as pillars of our societies. And always remembering that we have held the meetings on health, agriculture, a second meeting follow-up on health, this political council on March the 15th, the meeting on communication, 29th of March, women and gender, 12th of April, 11th meeting of the Council of Economic Complementarity of ALBA-TCP, 26th of April, the meeting of senior authorities on environment, and ahead of the COP26 in Glasgow in November, May the 10th, the meeting of think tanks of ALBA-TCP. And we still have to set a date for the meeting of Ministers for Culture. And once we fulfill our role as governments in all these areas, we need to convene our heads, prime ministers, heads of government. And in October, we want to reinvigorate the groupings of our social movements. Thank you again, ministers, for accepting this invitation. Thank you for your contributions, your work, and your commitment. ALBA is showing strength and consolidation in the midst of this difficulty for humanity. The Bolivarian Alliance of the Peoples is here, alive and kicking. Thank you very much.